What's poppin', y'all? One of the beefs that I feel like I've felt so out of the loop with, and I feel like probably most of us fell out of the loop with this, was with DJ Vlad of Vlad TV and Rory and Mal. Because recently, Rory and Mal, they made it quite high up on the media list for the year for Complex. And I think they deserve, a bunch of people disagreed with me. I think they deserve their position. I did a whole video on that Complex list. And especially in the past year, I think with the Drake and Kendrick beef, they've really brought themselves into one of the main go-to sources for that conversation, mainly Mal, not so much Rory. But I didn't know that Vlad had an issue with them, especially not after this clip that went under my radar when he got asked about the list on a podcast that he did with academics. So I'm gonna play you guys that clip first.
You know, I thought Rory and Mal being high, they're like 8 or something. I thought that was weird because I've never heard of anything that they've done that have really gone anywhere aside from them hating on people every so often. You know, there's some people on there kind of scratch my head a little bit.
They didn't put Adam on there at all.
What, at all?
At all.
That's crazy.
Yo, he was 22 like
That's
2
crazy.
years.
For 4 extra by himself.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he put this dude on and this dude blew his hand off. He should be on there.
So I didn't really get why he brought Rory and Mal out of nowhere, but it seemed like to me when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, okay, well, he just doesn't think they belong there. And I didn't even hear it the first time when he's like, oh yeah, you know, they're probably just hating on somebody. And then I didn't hear that the first time. I kind of just glossed by it. And then I saw a tweet by Rory on Twitter, and Rory said, Vlad dressed like a mall mannequin. Now, this is probably the most accurate thing I've ever seen. I wouldn't necessarily say mall mannequin because a lot of what Vlad is wearing is more like designer stuff, but I will say that if I had to compare the way that Vlad dresses, it would probably be to DaBaby. If you guys have seen some DaBaby outfits, you're like, okay, this is a lot, and that's kind of like Vlad. So I just found it odd that he would go at so I thought Rory was like punching back really hard here. It is just a meme, but after the comments that Vlad made, it didn't seem like much to me. But then he spoke on Rory again, and Rory and Mal on the Breakfast Club. So I'm gonna play you guys that clip.
Oh, doing my show as well, like No Jumper definitely affects the culture. So to leave him totally off the list, but you put Rory Mal on the list, just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think Complex has to do a better job, or maybe all of us got to do a better job. What did you think about Adam 22 not being in there at all?
He should be on there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like I would take Rory Mal off that list and put Adam on that list. Yeah, because if you look at viral moments and so forth, like.
So here, this is where I looked at it and I was like, okay, hold on. There's got to be something going on here with Rory and Mal, because I could understand saying that Adam 22 should be on there, and that will be a topic for another video, because I didn't even address that in the main video. I didn't really think about it. But for Vlad to just be like, oh yeah, take Rory and Mal out of there. Like, Rory and Mal aren't even, they're not in the bottom 5 or the bottom 10 or anything. Like, they're quite up there for the list this year. So I was like, what the hell's going on here? So I did a little bit of a digging, and it seems like there's quite a history of 4+ years going on, maybe even longer than that, from back to when Rory and Mal were both co-hosts on Joe Budden's podcast. So the first clip I found where Vlad talked and addressed Rory was in 2021 on an Instagram live. So I'm gonna play you guys that clip right now.
You know, I'm a fan. Get Rory or Mal. Nah, I'm good. I'm good. You know, the funny part is that Rory really went out of his way to talk about me, you know, on the Joe Budden podcast when I don't even know him. I mean, I understand why you know, me and Joe have our issues. You know, like, there's actual reasons for that. But Rory doesn't know me. We never met. We never talked. You know, he was just riding for his man, and then now he's fired. And now he has to hold those issues with me. You know what I'm saying? Why? Why jump into someone else's beef when you don't even know the person? You know, and you know, this is why a lot of times it's just better just to stay neutral. You know what I mean? Unless you actually have a problem with somebody, but why start talking shit about someone because your boss has an issue with them, then your boss fires you, and now you still have issues with that person when you don't even know that person. It's just stupid. You know, but Rory never struck me as anyone very intelligent to begin with, so I mean, I'm really not surprised, but it just goes to show for all the youngsters out there, man, you know, just because your man or your boss is out there beefing with someone, that doesn't mean you need to jump into that shit. You know, I mean, if there's a real reason, then yeah, but You just riding on someone else's issues, and then you have to hold those issues afterwards. You know what I mean? Not to say that I got active beef with the dude, but you know, he said what he said, and he has to stand behind that for no reason. It's just stupid.
At this point in time, they were getting fired, but they did an interview with Adam 22 where they kind of pressed him. And this is where I can understand, okay, Vlad really doesn't like these guys. Because if you guys didn't know, Joe Budden and Vlad have had their disagreements. It's escalated, not in real life, but to where you could have said they didn't really like each other for a long time. And then now there seems to be like a level of mutual respect. When you're making as much money as Joe Budden, I guess it's kind of hard to hate on somebody if you're like, I'm making more than that guy. And I don't know if he's making more than Vlad. I don't really like take pocket watching that deep. But they pressed Adam 22 on it consistently, in particular Rory. Like it first started off with Maul just asking like, whoa, what do you think about Vlad? And then Rory asked him this first clip that I'm going to play you guys.
So,
well, again, I don't think Vlad gets because of the business model that he created. It's his intent.
Yeah, I mean,
and the outcome
there's
of
a
it.
feel.
Because his intent comes off, I've never met the gentleman, it comes across that he does not give a fuck. He's there for the view, just the view, what happens with the culture. And the outcome tends to be that way as well. So his intent is bad, and his outcome is bad as far as certain situations. I'm not saying you got anyone indicted, I'm not being that person, but that's how a lot of people view him.
Yeah.
And off rip, I'm like, yo, you haven't even met the guy, but you're saying you don't like his intent. How can you know the intentions of somebody whose character you don't know off camera? Because we've seen plenty of people that seem like goody two-shoes on camera and in public, and then behind the scenes, it gets exposed how they really behave. So if someone behaves in a manner that you don't like on camera, how can you say what their intention is? That's one of the most difficult things to confidently say you know about somebody, is the intention that they have with what they're doing or saying. And then Adam gives a counterexample of I'll play you guys this clip right now.
From knowing Vlad, I know that he probably cares more about the result in terms of his interviews. Like, he's just told me that he's done things that I could never imagine doing and that I was shocked to hear any person say, in the sense that he told me that he called the police department when he interviewed the baby to make sure that the Walmart situation was a closed case, because he really wanted to ask him about it and he wanted to be able to say definitively like that this was a closed case or whatever. When I heard him say that, I was like, oh, that's a step that I never would have thought of in terms of making sure that his interview didn't.
Let's hypothetically talk. And I promise this has nothing to do with Vlad saying poor things about me or any fake back and forth we've ever had. Do you think his intent was to make sure the baby was good and that case was closed, or he'd been called that so much that he can bring up in another interview to say, hey, do you know that I did this? Hey, do you know this? Do you know this? Hey, do you know that? Like, is he
going down a rabbit hole?
Yeah, is he now just starting to do that because he's been called this so much? And he's a smart dude.
So here you have it, and you hear like, okay, dude, like this guy went to the police. He called the police and said, hey, is this case closed before I put out this interview? Like, he's doing the guy a solid, which he didn't even have to do. Even Adam said he wouldn't probably think about doing something like this. I don't think any interviewer would think about doing this. Radio stations would not think about doing this. Rory and Maul wouldn't think about doing this. Joe Budden likely wouldn't think about doing this. They just take the artist at their word and maybe take it down later, but later is too late. And then he just goes in on it. He's like, oh, well, you don't think he did that just because he can say like, yo, I did this later? It's like, what? That wasn't even public knowledge. Adam 22 was the first time we ever heard of Vlad saying, hey, by the way, I called the police. And it's Vlad that told him this on a personal level. So the fact that he was going to win some points with it, it's like, what the hell? And I can understand like Rory being like, okay, we know, well, that's this, but what about this? And then Adam 22 also gives him an example of the Tax Stone interview. Keep in mind, this was 2022. Tax Stone I don't think Tax Stone had been deep fried yet, and we didn't know that he wouldn't be here for probably the rest. He would get out before his lifetime if he's able to live healthily. But I'm going to play you guys this clip about Tax Stone.
Shout out to Tax and hope that trial goes amazing. No matter the result of that entire situation, what do we think Vlad's going to do?
Ask people about it on the podcast?
No, I think he's going to put it out.
Oh, after the fact? Maybe.
And I think I think he's holding something that he knows now, because he's a smart businessman. He was not holding that for some moral reasons.
But I interviewed Tax like that same week, so I don't think that Tax was saying anything incriminating. Because when I asked him about that situation, he didn't say
No,
shit.
no, that's
say nothing incriminating.
Adam. That's my point. He's not holding that for moral reasons, and I'm not mad at him for that. He's holding that because he knows whenever that trial happens, he has a tax interview. That's a business move. That's not a moral move, and I'm not mad at Tax for that. I'm sorry, Vlad, for that. Yeah, of course you're gonna hold that.
One thing
Don't say that's some like moral
But if
cultural
he had
shit.
dropped it at the time, it would have been getting views
Yeah.
all throughout this. Whereas if he drops it 6 years after Tax gets popped, I mean, is anyone going to even care? I mean, not as
Are
much
you
as
crazy?
Yeah, but if he
When
had
that
dropped
trial
it back
starts,
then,
that-
but why? But people want.
And this is where I could tell Rory's intention. We can tell Rory just by his action. This guy's not trying to cede any ground whatsoever. It's not logical. This is completely emotional. And you start to think about it like, dog, what are you doing here? Like this guy, you're saying that he chose not to release a Tax Stone interview because he wanted to wait for Tax Stone to get sentenced and then he would release it because it would get the most views. Well, guess what? It's been 3 years, or not 3 years, but 2+ years, 2.5 years at least, more than 2.5 years since they did that podcast with Adam 22. Tax Stone has been sentenced. Guess what still hasn't been released? The Tax Stone interview that Vlad did with him. And Tax Stone even said, I believe if I'm not like miscalculating or misremembering, Tax Stone told Vlad that he could release it because he's been sentenced, and he chose not to do it. And on top of that, Vlad, and this is a difference too. So Vlad is friends with Tax Stone, so I think he offers Tax Stone a different level of not gratitude, but a different level of care than he does maybe any other rapper or people that he's not so cool with, because Vlad is pretty much ops with Troy Ave because of what happened with Tax Stone, and he consistently shouts out Tax Stone and he consistently berates Troy Ave. He refuses to have Troy Ave on his platform. He refuses to even speak to Troy Ave because Academics has tried to set that up multiple times, because Academics had Troy Ave signed to a deal with like a podcast for a year under his platform, The Academy, which it really didn't do too hot. And then Vlad is like, nah, I'm not talking to that guy. F that guy. He's a scumbag. I'm not messing with him. Tax is my man. So Rory didn't walk that back whatsoever. So what? Are we going to get this Tax Stone? Is Rory going to say, well, like he could still release it in 10 years? Like, come on, dog. And Adam even like gives him game, which is why you can probably tell like these guys are not killing it on YouTube when it comes to views or anything. And they have to do not the traditional podcast route. They have to do the industry podcast route because they can't kill it in terms of merit and numbers and views because they don't get the game. Like if they think, and Adam even like gave them some game here. He's like, dog, he would have released it at Tax Stone's peak to get a ton of views, and it would have consistently been getting views since then. And then they try to argue with Adam about YouTube. Keep in mind, these guys were in their infancy of their podcast journey and content creation journey, and they're talking to a guy that had been doing it for at least 7 years up until that point. So it's mainly Rory, not so much Maul. And then Rory goes on and talks about where he believes his frustration with Vlad started, and I'll play you guys that clip.
Podcast. The only thing I've really talked about with Vlad is I feel he takes advantage of younger kids that don't realize what they're saying. They just see a huge platform and they try to get out of the circumstance they're in, and that's one of the biggest platforms ever. And I think it's exploited to some degree. I'm not mad at Vlad talking to grown men, and if they want to criminate themselves, that's on them. That's the only thing I've ever said. And then Vlad, which we know, this is a fact, is one of the most sensitive people ever. He created in his head that I've just been shitting on Vlad. That's the only thing I've said for real about Vlad. And then he called me unintelligent. And when you start attacking, like, all right, now you're doing something. I was just talking about your platform. Now you're trying to say I'm stupid.
You can't read.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can say that about.
I know my ABCs.
You can say that about
and
a
my
lot of
1, 2,
people.
3s.
You know, like clearly, like Orlando Brown is not of sound mind, and he'll
course
get
not.
a million interviews from everybody. It's the same shit. Our own people will do it to us. Everybody will do that. Because right now, I feel like everybody's just looking for that click.
Absolutely.
They want that revenue and shit like that too. So we can't just say, oh, Vlad is the only one doing it.
So he also goes on to say, well, a lot of other platforms do the same thing, but if you're the biggest, you got to take the most heat. Well, you know what's bigger than Vlad? The record labels that are signing these people. And there have been executives there for decades. And I don't see Rory calling out any particular executives. I don't see Rory saying this executive has signed this many artists and they've all died, or they've had this artist and sent them to do press here. I can't believe they're sending them to do something with Vlad. Record labels are way bigger than Vlad. They've existed for way longer than Vlad. So I just think I can understand reasons why people have to not like Vlad, certainly. And I do find it funny when Rory's like, oh, are you sure he didn't do that just so he could say, yo, I did that? Because that is a Vlad thing. A Vlad thing is like, yeah, I interviewed that guy. Yeah, I did an interview with him. Or yeah, we're close friends. Or I did his first interview. Or what's another one? What's another one that I really like? What does he say? Damn, it's escaping my mind. Or oh no, he's I think he always says like, oh, you should invest in stocks or something. That's more so. I wouldn't say that's a catchphrase of Vlad's, but him always trying to stop beefs, or him trying to relate one of his stories. But I think that's just like interview type of stuff. But yeah, the main ones that I said before are something that he consistently does. But why wouldn't you want to let people know? That's just, you can't even call that a character flaw. That's just a character trait that has nothing to do with the actual harm that's laid down. And then also like the AR Ab situation, AR Ab himself said that Vlad didn't get him locked up. So I don't really get why like Rory's harping on this. It's a little bit bizarre. But Vlad goes on and escalates it even further, and he tweets, Rory dresses like someone who left a show thinking he was the talented one, only to have the real talent go on to make $20 million a year while he struggles to get 10K views on his videos, which is about $20. Maybe Diddy will take you shopping when he gets out. And then he posts the videos for Rory and Mal's podcast, which is, I mean, it's kind of rough. However, I do think that I don't know the inner workings of these guys' business, to be honest. I have no idea. Vlad's business is on YouTube, so views are Vlad's business. But these other people, they're operating in some Ponzi. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like some of these other podcasts, you're like, dude, these people are scratching the surface with views, but they've got a set, they've got multiple cast members, they've got people on audio. How are they affording this? How is this not just burning a hole through their pockets? And I don't know, they've either got a sponsor or they've got some advertising network that doesn't realize they're not converting anything. Something's got to be going on there. But I do see a lot of Rory and Mal clips, and it is kind of unfortunate because I see Mal's opinions more than Rory's, and Mal was somebody that kind of frustrated me whenever I saw clips of him from the Joe Budden podcast. But when I see him now, he seems quite reasonable. For Rory, it always just seemed like he was, at least in this case, I just don't know why he can't even voice why he has a frustration with Vlad that wasn't broken down either by Adam22 or anybody else. Because he's kind of just saying like, yo, he changed up his platform, but I can still be mad at him for things that I believe that he did before, for intentions that I think he had before that. And he kind of adopted the beef off of Joe Budden, but you've never met the guy in person or had a conversation with him when you could have done either one. And then you could have gotten a better read of who he is as a person. So this is just realistically, in the beginning, I was like, yo, why is Vlad like taking shots at these guys or taking shots at Rory? But now I understand. Vlad is somebody that Vlad is petty. He does not forget somebody that talked about him sideways. And I think now he's spinning around and he's like, yo, get these bums out of here, which I don't got anything personal about these guys. So I do think that they earned their spot this year. However, we will see if they're able to maintain it until next year. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all in the next one.